Studio 2 allows you to create tile sets. And to do that, you have to first start by making a sprite. So I'm going to right click on sprites, click create, and I already have a tile set made, so I'm going to import, and I'm going to select this, double click on it, say yes. I'm going to change the canvas size and everything. And I've got this kind of checkered pattern here, and it looks really weird and not very nice either. I'm sure your tile sets will look a lot nicer than this one. And then these really poorly drawn blobs. This is actually all I'm going to need, so I'm just going to close this. And then I'm going to right click on tile sets and click create. And here we go. This is the tile sets property window. If I collapse that, we get just the tile sets window. So let's just look at that first. As always, we get to name it. So I'm just going to keep it as tile set 0 because I've also got it as sprite 0 over here, so I'll make them match. Then you want to select which sprite you're going to use for your tile set. And if you have one already, you can just click this drop down and either the list or image view, and I'm going to select that. If not, though, you can always create your own sprite by starting a new one. And if you do have one selected, then you can edit the sprite, which is the sprite's property window, or you can edit the image, which will open the image editor. But we already know this is fine. I imported one from a different program outside of GameMaker. The first thing we can click on is tileset properties. And if I click it open, we can see the window I had before, but now that I have a sprite, we can actually see it. I'm going to click center in view. These are the same controls as usual. We've got a grid with grid options, your zoom out, your zoom in, your 1-to-1 ratio, and your center fit. So center fit is nice. I can see what I'm doing. Now these tiles are 32 by 32. So the first thing I want to do over here is look at my tile width and tile height. And I'm going to set those to 32 and 32. Now already that fits my tiles nicely, but your tiles might be separated or offset somehow, and those options are as follows. We have tile offset X, so if the tiles started further to the right on your page, let's just say by, I don't know, 10 pixels, then there we go. We would shift the grid over by 10 pixels. You can also do the same with the Y offset. You can push it down if you're offset, something like that. But we'll reset that back to 0. Then we have tile separation. All of my tiles butt up against each other, but if yours have some sort of separation, this is where you would put in your pixel value. So if they were all a few pixels apart, let's say 4, then we can see that I now have this 4 pixel gap on the Y. You can do the same with X, of course, 4 pixel gap. Once again, all of mine butt up against each other and they're 32 by 32, so this looks nice. The last option I've got here is the border. This is the output border. When tiles are put into your texture page, GameMaker will automatically kind of smear the top, bottom, and left and right. Whatever pixel is there is going to get smeared out. And the default is by 2. So 2 pixels left, right, up, and down will be smeared. The reason for that is when tiles kind of like butt up against each other, they need to sit nicely without any seams. If you had no border, if these were set to 0, you sometimes will get gaps depending on the scaling and however your game is being rendered. So you do want to have kind of a tile smear. 2 is usually good enough, but if you need more of a smear, you can always change it here. The next option deals with your texture group, which up until this point has not been taught for GameMaker Studio 2 by me. But if you do have other texture groups, you can set it here. I just have it as my default. It's the only texture page I have, or texture group. And the last option is disabling source sprite export. A lot of words, but what that means is by default it is checked because we have a tile set and a sprite. Now, of course, if this is not checked, that means I'm going to export the sprite and the tile set. So both this and this will export to a texture page. This is important if you're going to use your sprite in the game independent of the tile set. So you're going to use the sprite and the tile set somewhere in your game. But if you only created this sprite just for use as a tile set, then you want to disable the source sprite export. You only want this sprite to be exported as a tile set, nothing else. No duplicate, because you're not going to use it in any other fashion. So yeah, if you do want to use it somehow, somewhere else in your game, turn that off. Keep it on though if it's just a tile set. And there you go. We've got a tile set set up. Perfect. Great. Now our editors down here, we have 3 options. We got a brush builder, tile animation, and auto tiling. 3 great features for GameMaker Studio 2. I'll do the brush builder first. In this one, we notice that we can only split them up by powers of 2, which is important. Definitely has to be powers of 2. I've used 32 by 32. But if I had a much larger image and I wanted them to be grouped together, I should be able to just paint them in here. So if let's just paint a couple blanks, some edges, and I'll select, let me center fit. And let's say for some reason, I don't know why, it had to look kind of like this. I'm creating a brush here. So this, every time I'm in my room, and we'll get to that in a moment, I should be able to grab just this as one chunk and place it into the room without trying to rebuild it every single time. This is good if you had, let's just say in an RPG, you had a table and you had to build your whole table edge, or a big tree, but it was split into these little 32s. You can rebuild the whole tree in here and then kind of stamp the tree later in your room. And you got a lot of options over here. You have the size of your brush. So if I increase this, let's pick something like that, you can see it's just making a larger version. So now it's 4 by 4 being placed instead of 1 by 1. Pretty simple. You have different tools. You got your draw tool or pen, D for pen or draw. That's what I've been doing. That's how I draw it. I'm just going to Control Z or Control Z to get rid of that. You have your eraser, same thing, you just kind of erase, and you can change the size of that as well. You can fill the entire region with whatever you have, like that, filled that. You can draw a line from one place to another. We can use a rectangle, use the top left to the bottom right, and paint out an entire rectangle. We can use select tiles, so we can select multiple ones by holding down Control, or singular ones by just clicking. And then we can only paint in that region if we want, or only fill in that region, or whatever we need to do. It's just to isolate a region and place stuff in there. Let's just put that back to how it was, and I will not use that anymore. Then we have AutoTile as well. AutoTile I haven't got into yet because I'm going to teach it with AutoTiling, but it's a way of placing tiles and adjacent ones will automatically be changed to a different image based on their proximity to other tiles, which sounds a little weird, but basically means if you have some floor and the floor meets up with a blank space, then it'll create this wall edge or whatever you have set up in your AutoTiling. Now we have flip for your X and Y, so if you have a tile and you want to flip it, you can always flip and mirror it and then draw it in place if it is not the orientation you want. Same, you can rotate it. So you can flip, mirror, rotate, whatever you need to do. And if you're going to be using AutoTiles, it'll come from your AutoTile library and your animation library for animation ones, but we haven't gotten into that. So let's just leave that brush the way it is, nice and ugly, and move on to tile animations. In tile animations, we have the power to animate tiles without using sprites or objects or anything else with a large overhead. This is just going to simply interchange between graphics, kind of like a GIF or a GIF if you prefer. And for this, I'm going to add an animation. Here we go. We've got one so far. And you want to set your number of frames. Now this has to be powers of 2, as with everything with tiles, it must be powers of 2, so 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on. The animation I have set up here is 8 frames long, so I will select 8. And now it has selected the first frame. I can scrub through if I want to find something else, but we're just going to go across. All you got to do is click the frames and put them in. So this is my first frame. There we go. It'll jump to the second frame. That's my second one, and you just keep clicking. So as long as you've set up your texture page or tile set perfectly, you can just click, click, click until you get to the end, and you can set your frames per second to see what it looks like. I'll just leave it at 15, and I can hit play, and there we go. This is my like weird blob thing moving around. 8 frames of animation, really ugly, but it shows off that you can have animated tiles. We'll put that in a room in a moment, but until then, let's just close that and move on to the last feature of TileSet, which is auto-tiling, which I imagine a lot of people will want to use. Let's center fit that. So we have 2 options here. We have 47. If we hit the plus symbol, we get a 47 tile set, which is a lot. I only created a 16 one, so with this selected here or here, I'm just going to hit the trash can to delete. I'm going to set up a 16 tile set, and I'm going to start adding them. Same way I did with the tile animation. The most important part about a tile set is GameMaker will not read your first tile. it is blank. Even if you draw something there, GameMaker will just save it as something blank. It is a non-rendered area. It is meant to be left blank. This is why all of my stuff has been shifted over to the right, to leave some blank space at the top left, and some extra blank space too. Now, when you set this up, you're going to get two tones, whether it's 47 or 16, a light color and a dark color. This is up to you on how you want to set it up. You can have the light tone as ground. I think that's probably the most obvious way to do it, or the most appropriate way. So in this case, I'm just going to go click, and same with animation. I would just keep clicking and clicking and clicking. So you see I've got 3 of the 4 grid are going to be floor, and then the dark one could be not the floor, whether that's a wall, or if this were dirt, that would be grass, or whatever. It's the not part. So I'm going to just keep clicking across all the way. I've set them up perfectly to look the same way that GameMaker has them set up. That was a mistake. I accidentally hit delete and deleted the whole thing, so we'll just set it up again. I actually just need to overwrite. If you accidentally put in the wrong tile, like there, just click back and click the appropriate one again and move along. That might be hard for you to see, and if that is, this button right here, Show Guide Overlay. Now if you do that, it's kind of difficult to see here, but it's overlaying their guide on top of my tile set. So if you missed anything or just want to make sure you did it right, which it looks like I did, then that's a good way to do it, and you can turn it off if you want. The last option here is this button, which is open or closed edges. What this means is when your tiles are placed at the end of your room, should it place a dark edge or should it be open-ended? So that was a lot of boring overhead, but I hope now you understand how to set up your tiles and then make brushes, animations, and auto tiling out of it. Now, let's hop into a room and see what we can do. So I've got room 0 here, and I'm going to need my room view and all the rest. Actually, let's just reset. There we go. Now we've got all the panels. And let's center fit. There we go. Once you're in your room, you can create a tile set layer, and this is where your tiles will go. And you get a whole bunch of tool options up here, which are the same ones as before: draw, erase, fill, line, rectangle, selecting tiles, auto tiles, edit tile inheritance, we'll get into that later, flipping, mirroring, and rotating. So once you have this open, you're going to get your tiles over here, and we're going to select which tile set we want to use. Well, we just have the one, so we'll click on that one. I'll center and view again. These are your tiles for you to draw with. In fact, if you didn't use auto tiling, yeah, you could just do like you always do. Since I used black, I'm actually going to go into my background and change its color to, I don't know, just this like kind of pale red. That's kind of bright, but it should help you see the difference between the black that's part of my tiles and the background. So yeah, you can draw one at a time, you can erase, you can fill. I can't undo that. Oh, wait, yes, I can undo, it's highlighting where I'm selecting. Seizure warning, I'm sorry. And you can create lines, and all the tools are available. The cool thing, though, of course, is auto tiling. That's what everyone really wants to learn about. To do that, you gotta select auto tile. Once you do that, you're going to get a large tile. And what it's doing is it's creating a center tile, which is the blank one right here, which would be ground in this case. And then it's creating all of the edges and corners based on, center fit that, your edges and corners. Then you just start drawing, really. So there we go. I'm drawing some sort of dungeon for an overhead game or a maze or whatever. This could be grass and water, dirt, whatever your tiles need to be. This is what it's referencing. It's going to get all of these and see how they're butting up against each other. Like if I put this one here, we kind of get, let's just not be on this view. We get this black dot here, white dot here, white dot here, this kind of adjacent or diagonal look, and that's one of these diagonal looks. That's the importance of those. And that's it. It's really simple. You just select auto tile as long as this is set up, and you just draw. And if you want to make small modifications later, you go back to single pencil drawing and then make your small modifications wherever that needs to take place, and there you go. You've made a tile set and you were able to auto tile it in your room, which should really speed up level design inside of GameMaker Studio. But that's not all. Of course, we made our animations. Now down here, we've got our animated one. I'm going to actually create a new tile layer for my animations. So I'll have to set my tile set again. And you can select any one of these and place them in your room. So let's imagine this is like a fire orb or something in an RPG. Now, they're static right now. That's because I haven't hit the play button to see what animations look like in my room. But if I do, we now have animated tiles. So we can just select where we want our start frame to be. So let's select this one and this one. And as you can see, they're all animating differently because I've selected a different first point to reference as my first frame. If they were all the same, just select the first one, and there you go. They all look identical instead of different. So yeah, now you also know how to make animated tiles, which has low overhead. You don't have to use objects or sprites. Just set up your frame strip into a tile set and place it somewhere in your room in a tile layer, which is great. The last thing were the brushes. So yeah, same with regular tiles where you select one tile in Paint. You come down here and you select a whole brush. There we go. We got our marching ant selection, and now we would place that. So this would be, like I said, if you had a full tree or a table or like a double door or something, but it needed to be split up into these smaller chunks, you would just draw it into a brush, select the brush, stamp it somewhere, and there you go. That also speeds up all of your tiling process. If you need to select from different libraries, you got your libraries here. You can select AutoTile 1, 2, 3, whatever you had set up. I only have the one. Same with the animations. I could select from different animation libraries and then, put those in there. But yeah, that's pretty much everything there is to tile sets in GameMaker Studio 2. You make a sprite based on a tile set you've made. You turn it into a tile set. You set up auto tiles if you need it. You set up animations if you need it. You set up your brush. And once you're all ready, you go into your room, you make your tile layers, and you just paint. And it's pretty simple. Thanks for learning.